happy Black History Month. So today I'll be reviewing some books by Dorothy Koomson. So I actually found out about this author in 2020. I think there must have been like a Twitter thread about like Black British authors and things like that. And yeah, before that I never really knew about her work. And then also later that year in 2020 when I was on a panel talk for my book, she was on the same talk as well, and so I got to even learn a bit more about herself and like her background and all of that. So anyway, ever since then I was like, oh, I really love to read her books, sort of like, just have a feel for them and all of that. And so earlier this year, I listened to three of her books on Audible. Her books are so addictive. Oh my goodness. So I started with My Best Friend's Girl, and then I was like, wow, I need to read another book. And then I read The Ice Cream Girls. And then the third one I read was My Other Husband. And I'll be talking about these three books today. So, the synopsis for My Best Friend's Girl. What would you do for the friend who broke your heart? Best friends Cameron Matika and Adele Brannon thought nothing could come between them until Adele did the unthinkable and slept with Cameron's fiance, Nate. Worse still, she got pregnant and had his child. When Cameron discovered the truth about their betrayal, she vowed never to see any of them again. 2 years later, Cameron receives a letter from Adele asking her to visit her in hospital. Adele is dying and begs Cameron to adopt her daughter, Tegan. With a great job and a hectic social life, the last thing Cameron needs is a 5-year-old to disrupt things, especially not one who reminds her of Nate. But with no one else to take care of Tegan and Adele fading fast, does she have any other choice? So begins a difficult journey that leads Cameron towards forgiveness, love, responsibility, and ultimately a better understanding of herself. Wow, this book was intense. So, Dorothy is an amazing writer, and they call her the queen of the big reveal, which I definitely can understand why. So, like, at the start of the novel, she just drops this bomb, and you're like, what? What is going on here? And so she drops that bomb, and then the rest of the book starts to unravel and explain and shares, the story of what led to that. And it's quite an interesting way of writing because I think other books I've read in the past usually they just start the story and you're enjoying it, and then at some point in the middle or in the end, they drop a bomb. But Dorothy basically drops the bomb at the start, and then you're like so piqued, so intrigued, like, oh my gosh, I need to find out what happened, what caused this. And then the story takes you on that journey. So I really, really enjoyed this book. I listened to this book on Audible as well. I didn't read it like a physical copy. And I really enjoyed it. So now let me read the synopsis of the second one, The Ice Cream Girls. And I actually recently found out that this has been turned into like a three-part drama, so that's quite interesting and cool. Anyway, Ice Cream Girls. At only 18 years of age, Poppy and Serena were the only witness to a tragic event. Amid heated public debate and scrutiny, the two glamorous teens were dubbed the Ice Cream Girls by the press and forced to go their separate ways and to lead very different lives. 20 years later, Poppy is keen to set the record straight about what really happened, while married mother of two, Serena, wants no one in her presence to find out about her past, but some secret will not stay buried, and if theirs is revealed, their lives will start to unravel all over again. Gripping, thought provoking, and heartwarming, The Ice Cream Girls will make you wonder if you can ever truly know the people you love. Wow, this was like a really interesting one. The characters, what happened. So yeah. This was a big one again, where you learnt about these two teenagers, two women when they were teenagers, and what happened between them, and like someone who they were in their care of. I don't want to give it away. And what eventually happens. And with this book, I think what really interested me, intrigued me about is like these two girls. They were unfortunately victims, and usually when the sort of victims they are, you would think is like, oh, because of daddy issues or abandonment issues, when you think about what could have happened in their childhood to make them crave love and attention so much. But they had loving parents, they had loving fathers. It didn't seem like there was any of those sort of like anxious attachment types. So why this would happen to them and why they would be so desperate for male attention, I didn't quite understand, and it wasn't also revealed or explained in this novel. But I guess such is life. So I think that was the sort of thing that was just I couldn't put my finger on why the girls would act the way they did. But then you can never tell, so many like awful things happen to women in this world, and some of them have like the background stories that tells why, but some of them is just not understood why they would act in such a way. But this book is really interesting, and I think Dorothy has written another book of like them in the future later. So it'll be quite interesting to actually read that book at some point to find out what's happened to these characters like 10 years later. But definitely another interesting and really amazing read from this writer. So now let's go to the third book I listened to, which is My Other Husband. Someone's trying to frame me for murder, but I can't prove my innocence because then I'd have to confess about my other husband. Claire Fossum is a best-selling novelist turned scriptwriter whose TV series, The Baking Detective, is a huge success. Writing is all she's ever wanted to do, and baking and murder stories have proved a winning combination. But now she has decided to walk away from it all, including divorcing her husband, Wallace, before her past secret catches up with her. As Cleo drafts the final ever episodes of the series, people she knows start getting hurt. And it's soon clear that someone is trying to frame her for murder. She thinks she knows why, but Cleo can't tell the police or prove her innocence because then she'd have to confess about her other husband. A series of terrifying murders, a set of complex lies, and a woman with no way to clear her name. My Other Husband is the latest gripping thriller from the Queen of the Big Reveal. Wow, wow, wow. This book was, oh my gosh. Even till date, whenever I'm jogging past some of the places when I was listening to this book, I think about these characters and I think about the story, and I'm just like, wow. And it's written in such a way, I think maybe because I haven't really read so many British books by British authors based in like UK and all of that. The storyline almost, I guess because I've read lots of psychological thrillers based in America, it almost seems like it's something American, but then I always have to remind myself, no, it's the UK. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, there are crazy people like this in the UK. I know there are crazy people everywhere, but
I didn't
when.
get that. Could you try again?
Oh, I wasn't talking to Siri. I know there are crazy people in the UK and everywhere else in the world, but when I've either watched these sort of thrillers or psychological dramas or read books like that, they've always been American. So I'm like, Americans, we all know they're crazy. So I was like, people are crazy like this in the UK too. Okay, I'm scared now. Anyway, this book was so good. Such an amazing read. Lots of flashbacks to like the character when she was in university to like her in the present. I learned a lot from this book. I learned about limerence and I was like, wow, limerence is actually a thing. Google it if you don't know what limerence is. You've learned something new today from me. But yeah, this author is amazing, and I think this year actually celebrates or marks her 20th anniversary in literature, and she's written 20 books in 20 years. That's an amazing feat. Like, as an author myself, I know how difficult it can be to like write novels. I've just had one novel and it's been almost 3 years now since I published that. But for someone to have written 20 in 20 years, it's an amazing feat. And I just want to say a big round of applause for Dorothy Koomson, man. She's doing the thing and her books are amazing. They're all interesting. And yeah, happy anniversary. To her, wishing her the best, many more, like, many years to come. But no, in terms of a book, like I said, sorry, excuse me. Once you read one, you wouldn't want to stop. You want to keep reading and reading and reading. So I read the three consecutively. Well, I listened to them on Audible. I had to stop myself from listening to more because I was like, okay, I love these books, but I want to read. There's some other books on like my list I want to get to. And so I paused for now reading more Dorothy's books to read some other books. But yeah, definitely they're like unput downable, if that's a word. The characters are interesting, they are diverse, different stories. I love, when they say write what you know. So I think she's based in Brighton or Sussex, if I'm not wrong. So her characters tend to be based around those places in Brighton or London, but mostly focused in Brighton or Leeds. So it's quite interesting to like, in books hear other places in the UK mentioned and not London all the time. Another interesting things about her characters are like the protagonists are usually black, but the way she writes them from the start to like majority of the book, you really cannot tell. And I find that really interesting, and it makes me, really see the way she uses her work. I don't know if she's doing that intentionally, but I think it's almost cannot be not intentional, because as a black person, yes, your personality, the things you love, any other person from any other ethnic background could love those things, but there are specific things about someone's cultural identity, especially a black person. If I'm talking about food, I could eat other types of cuisines, but when I'm talking about some foods, I will mention foods from my heritage, from my country. If I'm talking about the way I dress or the way I speak, and there are things that just come into it that you would understand this is a black person. But in Dorothy's books, they're quite devoid of these things. And so when I even started reading the first book, My Best Friend's Girl, I was like, I wasn't quite sure. It didn't affect my reading of the book or my enjoyment of the book, but it was just something that did become aware to me. And as a person who is like really interested in such issues, and I discuss and like I explore, themes of like cultural identity, immigration, and things like that in my work, it was not going to be obvious that this book just didn't have those like things that signify this person is a black person. And it's quite interesting because I was in a webinar earlier this year and that question was actually asked, and the answer I wasn't quite sure, but I feel it's a way of getting your point across without being overt about it. I think that's what I can say. So that's quite interesting with her characters, where they can just be anyone, but then every now and again there will then be like a few hints of, oh, she's mixed race, but her mom, or is it dad? I'm trying to remember. My other husband, in the other husband, I think it's the mom, or maybe it's the dad. I don't remember. One of her parents from like somewhere in West Africa, and so there's that drop in the storyline about her cooking the food. I think it's her mom. Her cooking the food. Her mom had taught her how to cook, and it was from that country. And I was like, oh, okay. And just a few things, but apart from those tidbits, which really could be removed from the book because it wasn't like a major part in the book, you wouldn't quite tell. But I think it's quite interesting how black writers and black artists, we can use our arts to like, make a stand without being in an overt way, but for people who are discerning, you know what they're trying to do, and that's quite interesting about her books anyway. But yes, I hope my quick review of these three books have given you a sense and a flavor of these writers, these authors' work. Brilliant work, really enjoyable. I just like, listen to them on my walks, on my jogs while I'm doing stuff, and they just transport me to this world. And so interesting. So if you're looking to read a book, you've not read like a black author before, even if you have, it doesn't matter. Just read her books. You're gonna keep wanting to read them all. And she has 20. So your to be read list is gonna definitely get longer from venturing into this author's work. So if you've enjoyed this book review, I think you'll definitely enjoy watching my other book reviews. So check out my playlist and I'll see you next time. Happy reading!